On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks simply could not find the basket on this Wednesday evening. We'll get into how they lost to the Pistons and much more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1893 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening into Thursday. And today's podcast is sponsored by the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show to make it your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out anywhere you can find podcasts, honestly, and subscribe on Apple, on Spotify. We're also on YouTube. Please like the video as you're watching it on that video platform. And please, please, please tell your friends and family about the podcast to help us spread the word. We'll be diving in now to what became a 114-104 loss for the Hawks at home against Detroit on this Wednesday evening. This is their second loss in a row after a game on Monday that was not quite similar to this one, but a similar end result, about an 8-10 point loss. That's what happened here. This is also a rematch against Detroit after a 1-point loss in November on the road, and now 0-2 against the Pistons this season, as they are kind of right now competing for the same real estate in the Eastern Conference standings. The Pistons now have a half-game lead on the Hawks after this game. The Hawks were small favorites, as you might imagine, at home. And again, it was similar teams, but the Hawks were playing at home and had all their guys available other than Zach Shea. But Atlanta just had a bad defensive start to this one. Got down 10 at the end of the first quarter. They were down 18 points at halftime, and as many as by 22 points in the second half. The Hawks did have a nice run early in the fourth quarter to make things interesting. They played very good defensively, actually, in the second half of this game, but never got to single digits. And look, I'm burying the lead here a little bit. The big number one lead point of analysis in this game was that the Hawks were not good enough on offense, and the biggest reason for that was their worst three-point shooting night of the season. Coming into today, their worst shooting performance of the year was a 6 for 34 game against the Lakers on the road about 3 weeks ago out in LA. Tonight, they matched their season low with 6 threes, and they actually had their worst percentage night, 6 of 38 from three, a cool 15.8% from long range. They've now only made less than 9 threes in a game 3 times. Tonight, the Lakers game, and then also a 30-point loss to Boston. This was the most competitive game the Hawks have had when they shot like this all year long. And honestly, for some historical viewpoints as well, this is the fewest threes the Hawks have ever made as a franchise when attempting 38 or more. That's a lot of attempts, obviously, so the sample size there is not entirely huge. It's more in recent years as the league has taken more threes. But some more context there, it's a brutal shooting night. It's only happened like 20 times in history. This many three-point attempts and this many makes or fewer, basically. And for the first 45 minutes of this game, so almost the entire game, only 2 guys on the Hawks had made a three. Vit Krejci and Garrison Matthews. Trae finally made one in the final minutes of this one. But Garrison and Vit were 5 of 9 from 3 in the game. 5 of 9 is really, really good for those 2 guys. The rest of the team was 1 of 29. 1 of 29 from 3 among, well, Capella didn't take any, among 6 guys. 1 of 29. That's almost impossible, basically. 0 of 9 for Hunter, 0 of 6 for Johnson, 0 of 5 for Daniels, 0 of 4 for Bogey, 0 of 1 for Okongwu, and then 1 of 4 from Trae. So basically, just couldn't make a shot. And overall, that led to a 96.3 offensive rating in the game. That was their 4th lowest efficiency of the season here in game 43. And look, it wasn't only the threes in this game. That was by far the lead problem for Atlanta overall and on offense. But they only shot 55% of the rim. That's a pretty bad number. They got there a lot, actually, just didn't make a lot of them. 5 of 14 on floater shots in the game. That's not very good either. So they were not horrific on twos, 51% from 2-point range in this game. That's also, though, a below-average figure, to be sure. And in addition to tonight's being the actual worst 3-point shooting game of the year, it was their second worst overall shooting efficiency game in both effective field goal percentage and true shooting. So basically, when you throw it all in there, 2-point shots, free throws, 3-pointers, all of that, they had just a hideous shooting night on the whole. The only game worse than this, in terms of overall shooting efficiency, was the 23-point road loss to Golden State about 2 months ago in November, when they only scored 97 points. So that's a lot of numbers. I understand that, but it was basically just the Hawks could not make a three. And then inside the arc, it was just merely like semi-bad. It wasn't terrible, but the 3-point shooting was just what it was. I don't have too much to add there. The shot quality is always a question, right? So Quinn got this question after the game. I've watched the game back now. I do firmly believe the Hawks got some bad shooting variance in this game. That does happen. I know it's a wholly unsatisfying explanation. I have also been saying all year long, the Hawks do not have enough shooting on their roster, and I still believe that. That is, of course, magnified with the way that Bogey is shooting right now, as we discussed heavily on yesterday's podcast. But even with Bogey shooting decently, they would still not have enough shooting for me. But even with that, this is an outlier bad shooting night. Like Hunter going 0 of 9 from 3. Dyson going 0 of 5 is a little bit more normal, but Jalen 0 of 6. Like it was just gross, honestly. And the quality of looks were not bad. Now, they weren't like wide open shots the entire game or anything like that. They weren't like dominating the process, but they did take some pretty good looks and just missed them, as Quinn kind of acknowledged after the game. And look, the process stuff on the margins was actually quite good in this game. They had 15 offensive rebounds. That's a very solid number. 14 turnovers is a very fast-paced game. Also a very solid number. They got to the line 26 times in this one. They were able to run a little bit as well, and they were actually efficient when they were able to run in this game. But the shot making was just truly woeful across the board. One more number for you on that. Their top 3 scorers this year, Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter, combined to shoot 15 of 48 from the field in this game. That is sub 33%, and you're going to lose when that happens if you're this Hawks team most of the time. And the last thing is they had a 71 offensive rating in half-court possessions. So every time they had the ball in a non-fast break situation, they scored 0.71 points per possession. For context, that is in the 4th percentile of the league. So when they were not able to get an easy bucket in transition, they could not score in this game. And that's pretty much the microcosm of what actually happened. Now, on defense, it was a mixed bag. And look, I will always say this, but if you're a new listener, I'll say it one more time now. It's not a vacuum. Your offense and defense do coexist. When you don't make shots on offense, your defense is put in worse positions a lot of the time. And vice versa. If you're not getting stops and you're being forced to play slowly, taking the ball out of the rim every time, it's harder for your offense too. So they do kind of cross over to some degree. Now, in the first half, the Hawks were pretty bad defensively, I thought. Now, some of that was magnified by Detroit's shot making, and it was good by the Pistons in that first half. They had a 132 defensive rating in the first half. The Pistons shot the ball well from the field and rebounded well on the glass in that first half. But overall in the game, Atlanta had a 106 defensive rating. That's actually an elite figure. That's really, really, really good, and you can't complain about that necessarily too much because after halftime, they had a shiny 80.4 defensive rating. That's 0.8 points allowed per possession. That is elite defense. Some of that was regression from the Pistons, who were really hot in that first half. But how about this? The Pistons missed 20 shots after halftime. They got 0 offensive rebounds. So the Hawks rebounded every single time the Pistons missed a shot. That is a fantastic process. They also forced 14 turnovers in the second half, including 8 in the fourth quarter. The Hawks played very well defensively after halftime. They just could not get over the hump to score enough points to make a comeback. Again, they were down by 18 points at halftime, so that was that was their own doing. But I am, if you're listening to the show all the time, you'll know this, but I am big into process. It's 82 games. You have to win the process battles. Yes, there'll be nights where you just shoot great, or something goes well, like one guy will go crazy, Trae goes crazy, or whatever, Jalen goes crazy. But night to night, you need to win the process battle. And in this game, the Hawks dominated the process battle. They ended up winning 3 of the 4 kind of major areas of the game. They won the glass, they won the turnover battle, they won the free throw line when it comes to attempts. They had 22 more shooting possessions than the Pistons. Basically, what that means is they took more shots from the field and from the line than the Pistons. That is usually a great sign. And when you win that by that much, plus 22 shooting possessions, is I wager to say, I should look this up. I wager that's probably like a 90th percentile kind of outcome, and you're going to win a lot of the time. But the Hawks shot the ball so poorly that it didn't matter. You know, if there's one area of the 4 that is the most consequential, it's your shooting efficiency. So yeah, you want to win them all, but the one you want to win the most is shooting, and the Hawks lost that by a lot. It is hard to lose a game by 10 points when you are that good on the margins. But the Pistons, just for one example here, the Pistons didn't even shoot that well from 3. They were okay, 12 of 34, but they won 3-point line by 18 points in a game where the Hawks lost by 10. Now, that's not telling the entire story, but if you just normalize the shooting, the Hawks would have at least been in this game, if not winning it. Sometimes that happens. They were also better from 2-point range. That's also worth noting. It was just one of those nights in a lot of ways that's not satisfying. I understand the visceral reaction to that when I try to explain it that way. The Hawks didn't play well on offense overall. Like they played better than the numbers indicate is what I would say, but they also just didn't make shots. And these are pros. They have to make shots. So sometimes there's variance involved there. It's harder to explain it versus analyze it. I've watched the game now twice. I think the Hawks didn't play that poorly. They just have to make shots, and sometimes they don't, and they didn't in this game. So I'll leave it there. But if I were to be more frustrated with anything else, yes, the shooting. I think the first half defense was probably the other thing that was like not explainable in terms of how shaky it was at times. But overall, they didn't play as bad as the numbers indicated in this one. It's just one of those nights. And Detroit's pretty good. So there's that. All right, we'll get into more of this game when it comes to game flow, player breakdowns, and much more in just one moment. Today's show is brought to you by Talkspace. Therapy is a game changer, can help manage your stress, improve sleep, and communicate even more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can also be a challenge, and that is where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace is the leading virtual therapy provider, and it makes getting the help that you actually need easy, accessible, and affordable for you. With Talkspace, signing up is also simple. You can match with a licensed therapist to fit your actual needs, usually within 48 hours. It's also convenient for you. You can sessions from the comfort of your own home, and even message with your therapist in between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there is a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize your mental health. As a listener to this podcast, you also get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNBA and use the promo code SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNBA and use that promo code. It's SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for our podcast. One more time, that is Talkspace.com/LockedOnNBA, promo code SPACE80. All right, and the Hawks were playing from behind really the entire game. It was 11-6 Pistons to begin this one. They made 5 of their first 6 shots to Detroit. Hawks had some turnover issues early on. That run ended it with the biggest highlight of the game. Jalen Johnson annihilated Jalen Durham on a dunk for a 3-point play. Actually had a nice move after that as well. Jalen was aggressive. He wasn't particularly efficient. In fact, he was very inefficient in this game. But I think he was one of the process guys that I thought was better than others. Like he got to the rim a lot in this one. He had 6 steals defensively, for example. Like he was aggressive. He didn't make the shots, but I think he was at least going and attacking in a way that he probably needs to be more often, or at least more than he was against the Knicks on Monday. But Detroit had their first big run mid-quarter to go kind of grab the lead a little bit. Rotationally, no surprises for Atlanta. I would say in this game, it was Hunter as the 6th man, Capella off the bench. I will say also, Okongwu started again. It looks like that's going to be a permanent move. I won't play the audio for it because it really does not say anything at all. But Quinn was finally asked about the change at starting center before the game. He gave a very Quinn nothing quote. It didn't explain anything. He did compliment Onyeka for getting healthy and working hard and all those things, and he's right about that. He's been playing well, but as far as explaining the rationale, there wasn't much of that. But 2 games in a row and a different matchup. I said Monday, we weren't 100% sure it was going to stick as that. It might have been matchup based, but I'm assuming now until we hear another change, it'll be a Okongwu moving forward, which again is totally fine with me if you didn't hear the show on Monday or on Tuesday. Anyway, they played 8 guys in the first quarter. I thought they might only go 8 the whole time, but then Garrison Matthews played 10 minutes in the game. He came in the second quarter, actually had the game best plus minus for the Hawks. That wasn't because of him necessarily, but he played fine off the bench. Defensively, as I sort of teased out earlier, it was pretty rough in the first quarter. They allowed 36 points and about 1.4 points per possession. That's terrible. There were some breakdowns defensively on the backside. I think they were playing a little bit more aggressively with their coverages in this one. They had a Okongwu high on the floor and no Riche, so a little bit small on the back line other than Jalen. And they had some mistakes, I would say. The Pistons also shot the ball really well early on, which probably was part of that too. But after a 17-5 run by Detroit, late first, early second, the Hawks look up and they're down 15 points. And it's like, oh, they're not 15. This is kind of a mess. They didn't get back a lot in transition during that run. There was a very funny moment, I would say, early in the second quarter where Capella got a steal and pushed the ball up the floor on his own like a guard for a fast break. He got fouled, tumbled to the floor. He got tripped. Made the free throws, so it was actually a positive play. It was kind of a funny one, though. It was amusing to kind of see that. Once he wasn't hurt, it was like, oh, that was kind of funny, Clint. But the Hawks did the thing that they actually did on Monday as well that I don't like. So if you missed the game Monday, I'll explain it to you a little bit. They started Okongwu, which is totally fine with me, but they're only playing him 6 minutes to begin the game. And then they've now asked Clint to play 10 or 11 minutes in a row in both games. And that just is not a good recipe. For example, Clint's played every game this season. He's probably already gassed and also not playing he never plays that many minutes in a row. He's an older guy. Like, I think you saw by the end of this run again, same as Monday, like he looked tired by the end of it. I don't know if that's a PT thing or what. I don't like that decision. Basically, I don't know if that's a performance team thing or whatever, but I think he should be a little bit playing shorter stints. He was pretty good in that run. He had 10 points, 4 rebounds, and a block and a steal in that span, but he was visibly gassed, and like I don't love that little process thing. Anyway, they were down 14. Sorry, gave up a 14-2 run at the end of the first half to go down by 22 points. They only had 2 points in 5 minutes offensively. Like I said before, defensively it was both bad and unlucky early on. Detroit made a bunch of shots, but the offense, 3 of 20 from 3.5, including the 2 of 3 from Vit. Also, I wasn't sure why Vit didn't play in the second quarter. He was pretty good in the first quarter and then didn't play at all in the second. Like, I think Vit should have played more than he did in the game, generally speaking. Would that have fixed everything? Probably not, but just something I wanted to at least say out loud. Coming out of halftime, down 18, they got a shot clock violation on the first possession. That's kind of a bad sign, I would say. But again, they played much better than the Pistons in the second half. They won the second half by 8 points, even while shooting terribly. The Hawks were the better team after halftime, but you're still down 18. Like that's not excusable. It's just more of an example of what actually happened than anything else. They had a nice run mid-quarter. They got 4 stops in a row defensively. Dyson had a nice circus layup. Jalen had a steal for a dunk. But they, of course, bizarrely had back-to-back, like almost airball threes right after that when they could have got back in the game. Nothing was falling the entire time. Also, I thought that I will give the hat tip to my friend Kevin Chenard on this, who said it more publicly than I did. But they had the starters going a little bit there, a tiny bit on that run. And they took and they had something at the table. They could have pulled those guys back, and they didn't do that. I don't know if that would have mattered, but they could have ridden it a little bit harder, and they didn't do that. And once they came out of the game, the run stopped. It is what it is. Sometimes that can kind of be nitpicking a little bit, but still, I didn't love that. Also, I will say this on the Pistons front. A couple of really impressive blocks by Isaiah Stewart, who I've always kind of liked as a backup center. One on Jalen, where he denied him at the rim in a way that you don't usually see him get denied like that. That happened in the third quarter. But the Hawks were able to keep the margin in that like mid 15-point range, basically, until the very end of very end of the quarter. But then they gave up a 6-0 run in the final minute of the third, where they gave up a 3, and then Trae had a bad foul on a 3-shot foul on Marcus Sasser, and suddenly you're down 21 again. So, like, it was better process, but they just couldn't make a shot. It didn't matter, all that stuff. In the fourth, I'll be quick on this. They had to make a run pretty quickly. When you go to the fourth quarter down by 18, 19 points, it isn't over. We've seen the Hawks make some big comebacks this year, but you've got to play really, really, really well, make shots, get variance, all of those things. Now, early in the fourth, they had a big block from Capella that led to a dunk by Jalen. Then Garrison Matthews actually had a 4-point play, and the Pistons missed their first 6 shots. Like, all the makings were kind of there for a big run, but then, of course, the Hawks just couldn't quite make enough shots. Like, actually, Capella got a 3-point play to make it 14. Then Dyson had a nice layup to get it to 12. And over about a 5-minute period, they allowed 6 points. They were within 12 points, but then they just couldn't make enough shots. Like, finally, as I teased out earlier, Trae made a 3 with 3 minutes to go to get it to 12. But like every time they would get a stop or a steal or something like that, they just couldn't finish the job. And I'll say that they got 8 turnovers in the fourth quarter defensively. They had a ton of deflections. Some of them didn't even go for steals. Like, they were flying around defensively. It's just that you got to make threes, and you got to make easy buckets and get runouts, and they did part of that, just not the whole thing. But again, they won the fourth quarter by a 12-point margin. They held the Pistons to 17 points. But when you're down by 22 going to the fourth, like, you got to be able to make the home run plays, and they just didn't make enough of the home run plays. So, yeah, I mean, the game was obviously lost in the first half. That's not like hard to say. It's actually funny, and a bit of synergy here. I referenced this yesterday on the show as well, or if you remember from the game back in November, when the Hawks lost to the Pistons the first time in Detroit by 1 point, they were down like 24 in the first half. It was very similar in that they dug this massive hole. They outplayed the Pistons from that point forward, but you dug the massive hole. And it's not like, you can't do that all the time. Occasionally you'll be able to dig one out of that, but you can't get down 20 plus to a decent team. And Detroit's not bad anymore. Like, there's a pretty good basketball team. And that was kind of that bit of synergy was not lost on me. Both games kind of been very similar. This one was not as close as that one. The Hawks actually led that game in the final seconds before a Cade Cunningham game winner. But similar story. Like, they got down big early and couldn't overcome it. So there you go. We'll get into kind of more on the player-by-player stuff in a second. Before I get into that, though, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, theater, music, comedy, or anything else they're interested in the live event space. And one of my favorite memories of the last year was actually attending a concert. The energy there, the excitement level there was awesome, and it's really memorable, and Game Time paves the way for that. They have this awesome feature called Game Time Picks. It makes it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events, and that feature also filters out all the fluff that you actually don't want and shows you the incredible deals on great seats that you actually are interested in. No wasting time with searches that you actually don't need across the board. Recently, I looked for tickets for a basketball game at Game Time, and really, the picks feature was awesome. I found amazing deals to actually see the views from the seats before you actually wanted to buy them. Plus, the super deal is particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing at Game Time shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at the end of the process, and that's an awesome feature that I really, really enjoy. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets right now with the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account at Game Time and use the code. It's LOCKEDONNBA, Locked On NBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. All right, I'll come back to this in a second, but I will just say this. There was literally one guy that I would say played legitimately well compared to the normal baseline for the Hawks, and that was Vit Krejci. I always try to give you a little bit of context, like Trae Young's good is not as Trae Young's bad usually is not as bad as some other guys are. Like, it matters what your actual baseline is. Jalen Johnson and Daquan Plowden are not the same. So I try to give you a little bit of context there. But the only guy that played up to their standards or higher was Vit, I think. A couple guys were okay as well. Like, there were some neutral guys, I would say. And some guys were well below the norm. But when you only have one player that I'm like, hey, that guy played well tonight, that's tough to overcome, I would say. To the bench first. Garrison Matthews was one of the neutral guys. He played 10 minutes. He hit 2 threes. He got to the line for three attempts on a foul. 8 points. He was +9. That was not really because of him, but I thought he was totally fine. He was neutral, did his job. Garrison just comes in and flies around and hopefully makes some shots. And I thought he played just fine, did his job. So he was in the neutral bucket. Bogdanovich, not so much. So I will mostly just plug the show that I did yesterday. I would encourage you to listen to that podcast. It's still relevant right now. It's episode 1892. It was about mailbag questions, and I did a whole segment, like 12 minutes on Bogey. So I'm not going to repeat all that now, but the short version is he's been playing terribly in recent days. I don't think he's healthy. I still believe that now, watching him move in this game. And in the last 5 games, Bogey is now 6 of 40 from the field and 4 of 29 from 3. And that's obviously tough. And beyond that, he's just not playing well. He was a game worse -15. He earned that in this game. He was bad. I said it on the show yesterday. Like, I don't believe you can just stop playing Bogey. And Quinn gave him a vote of confidence after the game. He got asked about him. Bogey, he basically said, I believe in Bogey, which is the right thing to say, and I'm sure he does. Organizationally, they believe in Bogey. He has a record that is long enough where you don't just bench him. If he was a young guy that hadn't proven himself in the league, he might not be playing right now. That's as bad as he's been playing recently. But he's just been too good for too long to totally pull the plug. But he is killing them right now. That's objectively true. And he hurt them tonight. And I'll leave it there for now. But again, listen to that podcast from yesterday if you missed it for even more context, numbers, etc. on Bogey. Clint Capella, 21 minutes off the bench, 16 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal for Clint. 1 turnover, -8 in the game, but that was pretty similar to what everybody else. He was 6 of 8 from the field, 4 of 5 from the line. Capella was solid. Like, I don't think he was great. He was not in the positive camp compared to Vit, but I thought Clint did his job. Now, he was not as good as the numbers indicate. I will say that. I don't think he was a 16-10, 2-block, good efficiency kind of impact in this one, but he didn't make mistakes. Like, he finished around the rim. He got rebounds. He created opportunities with the offensive rebounding. The 2 blocks were big, like, showcase blocks. So I think Clint did his job in this game. He wasn't electric or awesome, but he was fine. Offensively, it's still clunky. It's not going to stop anytime soon. I think he does need a day off or a week off. He's the only guy on the team that's played every game this year. And I think if you went into the season, you would say that's not what you should be doing with your 30-plus center to play him every single game all year long. But without Nance, they kind of have to. And I thought Clint was solid in this game. He wasn't great. He wasn't terrible. He was right in the middle, along with a couple guys like Garrison. And DeAndre Hunter was not on the neutral side. He was quite bad for him in this game. 10 points on 14 shots, but he was 0 of 9 from 3. That speaks for itself. 2 of 5 from 2. Not awful, but not good. Got to the line 6 times, made all 6, but I also had 0 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal. I will say he did a pretty good job on Cade Cunningham. late in the game. He was switched on him a couple times. He sort of got assigned to him for a stretch in the second half. It was pretty decent on him, I thought. But Hunter just didn't have it offensively in this game. He wasn't alone. A lot of guys didn't have it, but he had a bad one efficiency-wise, and that hurt them off the bench. To the starters, I mentioned before, Vit Krejci was very good in this game. 9 points, 3 assists, hit 3 threes, moved the ball, good enough defensively. Like, I thought Vit was pretty good, honestly. Like, it wasn't like he was incredible either, but I think he did his job and probably, again, should have played more than he actually did. Okongwu, 27 minutes, 9 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal and a block for Onyeka. He was 3 of 6 on twos, 0-1 from 3. He wasn't bad. I think he was not quite as assertive as he's been in the last few games before this. Of course, he had this great stretch the last 3-4 games. He was just okay, if not below average for him tonight, I thought. This is also, I think, not a huge shock. Detroit was probably the most physical team that they've seen up front in the last 4 or 5 games, and that's not probably an outlier against Okongwu. Like, he was able to kind of feast on some pretty soft front courts. Boston was injured. Phoenix is bad up front, generally speaking. New York has talents, but he's not like the most physical guy in the world. So, like, that was advantageous for Okongwu. Tonight was a little bit more of a physical challenge against Stewart and Duren, but it wasn't like he was bad. He just didn't have a great game. A couple nice passes along the way. They probably could have used him even more offensively, honestly. But he was just okay, I thought. Dyson Daniels, 33 minutes, 20 points for Dyson, 10 rebounds as well. So 2010 speaks for itself in some respects, but had two steals and 2 assists. I will say this. It was not the best defensive game for Dyson. Now, that's grading on a curve. Dyson is an elite defender. Not just good, elite. But he had a hard time with Cade Cunningham, I thought, a few times in this game. Now, Cade's an all-star player, but it was not Dyson's best performance. Also, he was not super efficient. He was only actually, it was 0-5 from 3, which probably was the reason for that. But 20 points on 21 shots is not awful, but it's not great. He has been getting to the rim really well recently. The drive game has been improved for him. He's been more aggressive. I do like that, but the missed shots, he was fine. Like, he wasn't like he was bad, but it wasn't like probably as good as 20 and 10 with 2 steals would tell you. Jalen Johnson, interesting night for him. 17 points, 9 rebounds, 6 steals, 4 assists, but he was 0-6 from 3, and he was 8 of 15 on 2, which is fine, not great. I thought Jalen was like hit and miss. He was aggressive. He was not efficient at all. Had some mistakes, I thought, along the way too. But defensively, he helped them turn things up. Obviously, the steals are very helpful. But even beyond that, he was athletic and forceful defensively. So he was in the average-ish column for what he actually is, despite the fact that he was not efficient at all in this one. And then lastly, Trae Young had a bad game. Like, Trae was not good in this one. 13 points on 13 shots from the field. 9 assists, yes, but 2 steals, 5 turnovers. Like, he just wasn't very impactful. I think Asar Thompson gets credit for doing a lot to frustrate him. I think the Pistons did a good job putting length on Trae. Like, a lot of teams do that, but I thought Asar in particular was really good against him, and just not a good Trae game at all. Like, I'll say that when it happens. Like, he just wasn't good. The passing was pretty good, as usual, but as a scorer, just wasn't much there. Inefficient, kind of absent defensively. Like, he was okay, again, by his standards, so that's still like not very good, generally speaking. So he'll have better nights, but Trae was not good in this one, which is he wasn't alone. Like I said, Bogey was terrible, Hunter was pretty bad, Trae was pretty bad, and guys like Onyeka, Jalen, Dyson were like okay to below average, like Capella okay. So like no one was great other than Vit, and even then Vit was not like A+ home run. So that kind of tells you the story to some degree in this one. And I'll leave that there for now. So with that said, the Hawks now stayed home for a little while. Of course, this is the first time they had played at home the second time in 24 days, which is crazy. And there is science on this, and it's not an excuse. It's just I waited to say this until now, so I can't be accused of trying to spin it too much. But one of my things that I've said forever, and it's a thing around the league, is when you're away from home for a long time, the first game back is sometimes rough. And there's data that proves that. Teams believe it. And this is kind of like that. I know they were home for one game, but they have basically been gone for 3.5 weeks. And to have that happen and have this one game, maybe there's a little bit of noise in there, but worth at least saying that out loud. But they are now home now for 2 more games. So no time to rest. They play a game on Thursday. Now, the game on Thursday is a easier game on paper than tonight's game was. They play the Raptors. The Raptors are not very good at basketball this season. Toronto is 11-32 on the year, but they are playing a little bit better, I would say, in recent days. And they also have the rest advantage in the game. They did not play tonight. It is a road game for the Pistons, for the Raptors, but still, nothing is easy about this game. Like, I understand the Raptors are not as good as the Hawks, and I will still stand on that. Looking right now to see what our friends, our friends at FanDuel make the Hawks a 6.5 point favorite in the game, which is obviously a real favorite, but not like a 20-point favorite. Like, they're not going to cruise to victory necessarily. And the Raptors are healthier than they've been in recent days. They have quickly still out for them, but I think everybody else is available for them tomorrow. So TBD on the Hawks rotation, on the Hawks injury situation. Ricochet was out again tonight. Nance is getting closer, but isn't quite back yet. So we'll see on the back-to-back. Of course, they've sat guys before, especially Bogey. So we'll have an update for you, at least on social media, before the game tomorrow. But I'll be back and talk about the game tomorrow. But anyway, they play the Raptors on Thursday and then on Saturday as well. A mini baseball-style series, 2 games in 3 days against the same opponent. And now with a little bit more urgency. After you lose this one tonight, you got to go out there and hopefully get a win or 2 in the next 3 days. And we'll have full coverage of that coming up. So with all that said, please subscribe to the Locked On Hawks podcast anywhere you find your podcasts. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're also on YouTube. Please like the video as you're watching it right now on that platform. And if you're a video subscriber, please also subscribe on YouTube, on an audio platform, Apple, Spotify, etc. Auto download, all that fun stuff to support the podcast. I very much appreciate all of that. Please follow the show on social media as well. We are on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. I am there at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. And you can also find my non-podcast work on the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everyone. Hopefully a better night ahead for the Hawks on Thursday than it was tonight. Stay tuned, and we'll see you all next time.